Hopefully you have heard this already this morning, but if someone hasn't taken the time to look you in the eyes and say, welcome in, welcome in. Man, I love getting to be a part of the gathered church. Whether you're gathered in a room or online, you guys are family. Anytime I talk with our door holder teams, one of the things I tell them that your goal on a Sunday is to make people feel welcome and at home. And here's why I say that, because my name is Tyler, and I am ridiculously awkward. I just am. If you've ever had an awkward interaction with me, it wasn't your fault. It wasn't. About a year after I'd gotten to know our worship pastor, Josh told me at one point, he was like, man, I remember that first time we ever had a conversation together. Dude, it was real awkward. And in that moment, I then wore the awkwardness of the previous conversation and the awkwardness of that conversation, and I'd put it all on myself, and I was just extra awkward for the rest of that conversation. It was so good. No, so I hope you feel welcome and at home, because I know the value of being comfortable where you are. Because when you can be comfortable where you are, you can start to experience the goodness of that moment. And so whether you're here, whether you're online, I hope you have felt welcomed by this church family, because you are here and that makes you part of this church family. Well, I've got a confession to make for you guys today. I like random facts. I like to know lots of random, ridiculous things like, did you know freshwater snails actually kill more humans than crocodiles? Mind blown, right? They kill about 10,000 a year, where a crocodile only kills about 1,000. I know, blew my mind when I read that one. Here's the caveat: the snail doesn't kill you, it's the disease it gives you that kills you. But you know, potatoes. Man, random things that you don't even need to know, but now you do. You're all welcome. So I thought we would play a game about random facts today. And since I've been in student ministry since literally I was a student and I'm still hanging out there, I like a good interactive game. So we're going to be interactive. So for you guys in the room, I'm going to get you to do what you were just doing. I'm going to get you to stand up. I'm going to get you guys to stand up. Now, for you guys online, I know standing up probably isn't practical, especially if you're driving down the road. So maybe don't stand up. What you guys can do, this is going to be true, false. So what you guys online can do is every time I ask a question, you just drop in the comments, true or false. And if you get them all right, make sure you brag about it. Brag about it humbly, because we're at church. But man, go ahead and brag. Let them all know, like, hey, I got them all right. All right, for you guys in the room, this is how you're going to do it. If you think the answer is true, you're going to raise your right hand. If you think the answer is false, you're going to raise your left hand. And if you get the answer right, you keep standing. But if you get the answer wrong, you sit down and we all collectively shame you. Welcome to the exchange, where we shame you just a little, just like a little bit of shame, not a lot of shame, All right, are y'all ready for it? Right hand is true, left hand is false. So first one for you guys: a chicken can live without its head. True or false? True or false? True or false? Get them up, get it ready for it. A chicken can live without its head. True. So if you thought it was false, sit it down. All right, so here's a real fact for you. The longest recorded chicken to live without its head, 181 days. They had to feed it with a little dropper. They literally dropped food down its throat because there was no head. It's so weird. It weirds me out. It takes, true or false, it takes 7 years for your body to digest gum. True or false? True, false, true. You've heard this one since you were a kid, but is it true? It's false. It's false. And here's what actually happens. Your body doesn't digest the gum at all. So if you swallow gum, you can see it again later. Yep. All right. So an Ivy League conference school actually has the most NCAA football championships. True or false? An Ivy League school. True, false? True. Princeton has 28 football championships. Roll Tide, as I heard someone say, only has about 17 or 18. So they still have a literal decade worth of winning left just to catch up. Just saying. So you can see the Great Wall of China from space. True or false? True or false? False. Anybody still standing? Oh, got a couple. Okay, got a couple. Don't feel bad. That one cleared the room at 9:32. So here's what happened. That ended up in a textbook decades ago, and it just started being believed as true, even though it's not. Astronauts have confirmed you don't naturally see it from space. You can use a Google Earth satellite, sure, but an astronaut does not see it from his spaceship. All right, next one. Your hair and fingernails continue to grow after you die. True or false? True, false, true, false. False. So here's what actually happens and why we think that. Your hair and fingernail cells die like almost immediately. What happens is the skin starts to dry up and it pulls back and it makes the fingernail look like it kept growing. Does the same thing with your scalp. So morticians, funeral home people, they actually moisturize the hands and the hair so that you don't notice it at the funeral. I know, weird facts for you. You're learning all kinds of things today. All right, last one for you, and it's on the screen. This is a picture of ducks. True or false? False. It's false. Did all three of you guys manage to stand the whole time? Give it up for these guys. So good. We actually only had one person in the 9:30. I haven't had a chance to go back and check 9:30s online yet to see if anybody got them all right there, but I'm going to check that in a little while. But yes, so this is not actually a picture of a duck. This is an American coot. I know you're like, an American coot is my Uncle John. Listen. Your Uncle John is an old coot. He's not an American coot. That's totally different things. American coot is a bird. It looks very similar to a duck. It lives in marshlands. It flies south for the winter. It does all the things you think about when you think about a duck. But if you look closely, its bill is actually, it's more like a beak instead of a bill like a duck actually has. And then if you could see under the surface, you would see that its feet are not webbed. A duck's feet are webbed together. This thing's feet actually look like a chicken's feet. That's exactly what their feet look like. And so they look like ducks. And so here's what happens. This disproves the old adage. What walks like a duck and talks like a duck isn't always a duck. And let me tell you, what sounds like truth and what feels like truth isn't always truth. And that's what the Apostle Paul was addressing in his letter to the Colossians. So he's starting to introduce himself in Colossians chapter 1, and that's where we're going to hang out today. He's introduced himself just a little bit to them, and so now he's going to pray for them. That's really where we're going to hang out today, is in his prayer. And so as he prays for them, we can kind of look and see there's some things happening in Colossians. There's some fiction being believed as fact. And so we're going to dig into it and kind of look at some of those fictions and those facts. So we're going to start in Colossians chapter 1, verse 9. It reads like this. It says, "So we have not stopped praying for you since we first heard about you. We ask God to give you complete knowledge of his will and to give you spiritual wisdom and understanding. And the way you live will always honor and please the Lord. And your lives will produce every kind of good fruit. And all the while, you'll grow as you learn to know God better and better. We also pray that you'll be strengthened with all of his glorious power so that you'll have all the endurance and patience you need. May you be filled with joy, always thanking the Father. He has enabled you to share in the inheritance that belongs to his people, those people who live in the light. For he has rescued us from the kingdom of darkness, and he has transferred us into the kingdom of his dear Son, who purchased our freedom and forgave our sin." So if you think about this a little bit in the opposite direction, anytime somebody prays, like they're praying for something specific. They're praying because of something. And that's also true for Paul here. He is praying specifically for some things. And what we can kind of tell as we're looking at this and you go on to read the rest of the letter, he is speaking specifically to some fiction that has been believed as fact. See, in Colossians, they've got a lot of religions around them. There's mysticism. There's all kinds of that stuff happening. But then they also have Jewish believers who are Jewish people who have become Christ followers. And so they're bringing in some of their Judean law. And then the other people bringing in some of their mystic religions. And they're just kind of stacking all this stuff on top. And it's getting to the point to where nobody knows what's fiction. Nobody knows what's fact. And so they're struggling not only to know truth, but they're also struggling in how they're living it out. And so that's what Paul starts to talk to, is specifically trying to address some of these faith fictions and faith facts. And so he prays for them, and he prays for spiritual wisdom and understanding for them. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull out a few faith fictions that you can kind of find in this passage, and we're going to counter them with some faith facts. Now, anytime you ask someone about their faith, probably one of the first things you're going to mention is where do they go to church, which is awesome. Love that they're a part of church. Next, they're probably going to mention a moment to you. That moment may have been at a VBS, a summer camp. It may have been just a few weeks ago. It's that moment when, they prayed and they finally surrendered to God. And they're going to mention that moment. They may mention a baptism moment and maybe just one or two other key moments. They're going to mention some moments to you. And so we start to get this faith fiction that faith is a moment. We start to get this faith fiction that faith is all about a moment. But that's not the case. The fact is, faith is a journey. Faith is a journey. Like, I could stand up here today and tell you all about a moment on my front porch as a 10th grader when, man, there were tears and, I finally went, God, you did this and I am surrendering to you. I can tell you about that moment, but that moment doesn't exist without a journey. You see, before that was a summer camp in North Carolina. Before that were some Sunday morning Bible study with Alan. There was Wednesday night Bible studies with Jerry. And there were all kinds of moments that would almost be insignificant. But every single one of those little moments played a role in getting to this faith moment. They were a part of my journey. But my journey also didn't end at that moment. It continues every single day. Let me explain it like this. Are you familiar with Tom Brady? Of course you are. He's Tom Brady. Tom Brady. You don't have to be a football fan. You don't have to watch. You're well aware of who Tom Brady is. He is arguably the greatest quarterback of all time. Love him or hate him, that's not what I'm talking about. You know who he is. But his moment wasn't a Super Bowl or multiple Super Bowls. His moment wasn't because of Super Bowls. It started much, much earlier. Probably started even a little before middle school when, he saw the football players and he knew, I want to do that. And so he got into middle school. He got on the team. He started practicing. He was working at it. Got into high school. There were wins, there were losses, but he kept practicing, kept working at it. Went to the University of Michigan, got some wins, got some losses, kept working at it. Got selected to be able to be in the NFL draft. And, that's a big moment. And you know what draft pick he was? 199th. He was the 199th draft pick. That means all those teams picked 198 people before they picked Tom Brady, who would go on to become, again, arguably the greatest quarterback of all time. And in that moment, did he lose hope? No. He just kept on the journey. He kept on the journey. And after he became the greatest of all time, do you know what he did? He kept on journeying, man. His journey isn't over. He's in his early 40s, and that's when most guys in the NFL have hung it up. But he said, no, I'm going to keep working at it. And so every single day, Tom Brady works at it. It's a journey. Maybe you're not a sports person, and you're like, it's not hitting me. Here, how about this one? T Swift, all right? T Swift, you know T Swift, Taylor Swift, for those who are unfamiliar. Taylor Swift, highest paid artist of arguably all time. She is right up there at the top. Man, she can pull her own music off of streaming services because people aren't paying her what she feels their music is worth. And she can do that because people will just go somewhere else to find her music. But did she start there? No. First, she was a girl with a guitar. Then she was a girl who convinced her parents to move to Nashville so that she could pursue a music career. Then she was a girl who was slamming screen doors and crying on guitars. And you know what the public did? It's just for some reason, we all agreed we didn't like her. And so we're all like, oh, that Taylor Swift, she can't sing. And then she made her way over into the pop genre, and we were like, oh, she's shaking it off, but we still don't really like it, I don't know. And we were still kind of, as a public, dissing her a little bit. But do you know what happened? She didn't really care because you were listening to her music, and she was making all the money. And you know what happened? We finally all went, you know what? She is a really great artist. She not only sings her own music, she also writes her own music, and it's pretty cool. And it's a journey, and she's not done yet. She's still cutting albums. See, every day Tom Brady wakes up and decides he's still going to be the greatest. Every day T Swift wakes up and she decides, I'm going to still write music. Every day I have to wake up and choose to journey in my faith. The Apostle Paul said it like this in 2 Timothy 4:7. He said, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race, and I have remained faithful in this. Man, he has been fighting every single day in the journey. Every day I have to wake up and choose. Is today a day that I check the boxes, or is today a day that I go full out like, God, I'm listening, I'm here? And there are days I make that job. There are days where I got the boxes checked. Then quite honestly, there are days when I didn't even succeed at checking the boxes. And on those days, what I have done is I've bought back into the fiction that it was a moment. I've bought back into the fiction that the job was done. Like, I don't have to keep living it out every single day. Faith is a journey that you and I have to choose every single day of our lives. And on that journey, sometimes we throw up some miracle level prayers. I got to be honest with you, when I hear them, when I see them on socials, I always have a little bit of concern when I hear miracle level prayers. And check with me, like, I don't have a concern about what God can and can't do. My God is a God of miracles. He has proven time and time and time and time and time and time and time again that he can do the impossible at the drop of a hat, and it didn't even cost him anything. I don't have a question of whether or not God can do miracles. My concern is what happens to our faith if he chooses not to. See, we buy into that faith fiction, that faith is miracles, but the fact is, faith is endurance and patience. Faith is endurance and patience. That's why the Apostle Paul prayed for the Colossians, and he said, I am praying for you to have all of God's glorious power so that you can endure with patience. We live in a world where God chooses not to always do the big miracle we're looking for. And then we have to live not having the understanding of why. We have to live with the questions, and they might not be answered. Faith isn't about the miracle moments. It's about the moments where we endure patiently. You know, we have those questions like, God, why did you do it like this? Why didn't you bring them? Why didn't you save them? Why did you let that car wreck happen? Why? Why, God? And in those moments, we have to fall back to Jesus' prayer. As he's teaching the disciples to pray, he looks at them and he goes, I need you to pray for your daily bread. For some of you, it literally is like, God, I need endurance and patience right now because there's no food at the house, and the bills are due, and there's not enough money in the bank, and I don't know how I'm going to endure this. Some of you are praying, God, I've got the family member in the hospital. I've got them there, and if you don't save them, I don't know what I'm going to do. Some of you are sitting there praying, God, help me to endure as my spouse is unfaithful. Some of you are praying, God, help me learn how to be a faithful spouse. You're praying about that rebellious teenager. Teenager, you're praying for that stubborn parent. Like, we are enduring these things, and here's what's going to happen. You're going to endure some of it. You're going to have the patience in some of those moments, but you're not going to be able to do it on your own. There's going to be a moment that's going to break you, and that's why we have to pray for that daily endurance and patience from God, is because ours isn't capable of doing it. Maybe you get some of the wins sometimes, but there are those moments where if it's not his strength and his power, it will finish us. And we'll try and walk away from the faith. So faith isn't about miracles. Because faith is so easy in the miracles. Like God parts the Red Sea and you walk through on dry land, man, that's easy. Like there's no question. I follow God, man. I'm all in. Like here we go. Let's go. Those moments are easy. What's hard is a couple of weeks later when we haven't seen water, when we're still chewing on those last morsels of the flat loaves we baked back in Egypt and it's getting thin. Those are the moments when faith is actually necessary. Those are the moments where we have to lean in and go, God, I can't do this, and if you don't strengthen me, I'm probably out. Probably done. So we have to pray daily for endurance and patience. Many of you guys are probably like me in the fact that you have heard many, many sermons throughout your life. I've had the privilege to preach a few, and of those sermons, there are always some that kind of they stand out in my mind nowadays because, and frankly, I've preached some of them, because the purpose of the sermon was to get people to heaven. Like that was the goal. Like here was the goal. Like you're not going to heaven, and now we're trying to get you to heaven. And there's nothing necessarily inherently wrong with that, but it starts to create this faith fiction in our mind where faith is waiting for heaven. It creates this faith fiction where faith is about waiting for heaven. But here's the fact. Faith is living out new creation. Faith is living out the new creation ideals right here and right now. See, so often we look around, like we hop on the social medias, turn on the news, we're looking and we go, man, this world is broken, it's in need of repair. And when our faith is about waiting for heaven, our response to a broken world in need of repair is, man, let it burn so we can go ahead and get to heaven. Because we have this idea like heaven is this place up in the clouds, man. It's Tom and Jerry. They've killed each other for the 157th time. They're on the little cloud. They're floating up. They get there. It's the nice golden gates, and they open, and it's all in the clouds. And like we think about heaven that way, but that's not the way Scripture talks about heaven. Scripture talks about heaven as new creation. It is literally this earth recreated as it was ideally designed to be in the beginning. And so our faith isn't about waiting to get somewhere. Our faith is about living out new creation ideals right now. It's about living out what Jesus modeled for us. You see, Jesus actually inaugurated the end of our current world and the beginning of new creation while he was on earth. And what he said was, hey, okay, I've got this process started, and here you go, believers. Your job is now to live out new creation, even though we're still in the old creation. And he modeled it like this. He did this in Matthew 7, and you're going to be familiar with it. It says, do unto others whatever you would like them to do to you. And that's where we usually stop it. But it keeps going. It says, this is the essence of all that is taught in the law and the prophets. Do unto others what you would have them do to you, because this is the essence of all that is taught in the law and the prophets. Jesus looks at this, and he's not talking to your kid so that your kid will stop punching the other kid. Like, that's usually how we use this one, right? It's like, hey, like, you got to do to people what you would want them to do to you, so don't punch your neighbor directly in the face. Like, maybe hit them in the arm next time. I mean, that's the way we use that verse, and it's sad that we do that to it, because this is literally modeling new creation ideal for us. It's looking at a world that is about us and saying, no, it's about the other people outside of me. This world needs to be repaired, and the response of a believer is not let it burn. The response of a believer is let me bring in as much new creation as I can. Amen. We're not going to fix it. Like, hear me say that. There is no movement, nothing that is going to fix creation. Only Jesus can do that. But what we can do is we can model what new creation is going to look like. And we can do that right here, right now. That means I treat people as if they're actually the image of God. Because that's how I want to be treated. I want people to treat me with the honor and respect and the trust that comes from being made in the image of God. Therefore, I have to treat them that way too. And that doesn't mean I'm just like, I don't punch them in the face constantly, even though I kind of want to in the inside. Like, it starts there, sure, but then it continues. And it doesn't just mean, okay, well, I didn't punch them in the face, but I am going to go tell my wife about what they had to say and talk real negatively about them. No, it also doesn't go there. Instead, what it does is it says, I'm going to treat you as if God loved you enough to die for you. And here's what's going to happen is you treat people with that kind of honor, respect, and trust. Many of them aren't going to return it to you. We want them to, but the fact is they're not going to more often than not. As a matter of fact, if you do it enough and they get to know it about you, they may even try to take advantage of it. And our response, man, the response I want to give is, all right, well, I tried. Right in the face. I held that one in as long as I could. But instead, my response in that moment is to look and go, like, maybe I don't put myself in a situation where you can just royally abuse my kindness and my love of Jesus, but at the same time, I am still going to honor and respect and trust you as if God loves you, because he does. And that kind of living goes against the grain of everything that's natural to us. That kind of living not only goes against the grain, but it also shows us the kind of life, as the Apostle Paul put it, that bears every good fruit. It's the bearing of every good fruit of new life in Jesus, and it's making our own new creation start to just be a little glimpse right here, right now. So let's talk about the three things real quick, because there's something that's very, very likely to happen if we just stay at surface level with these three. I told you faith is a journey. I told you that faith is about endurance and patience. And I told you faith is about living out new creation. And so the temptation is to hear that and believe the fake fiction that faith is being better. It's really tempting to believe that faith is about being better because it sounded like it was. Everything we just talked about was about us having to be better, but that's not what faith actually is. Faith is being rescued. Faith is being rescued by the one who actually is better. The Message talks about Colossians 13 and 14, these verses right here, a little bit different than what we read. And so I just want to read them to you real quick. It said, God rescued us from dead-end alleys and dark dungeons. He set us up in the kingdom of the Son that he loves so much. The Son who got us out of the pit we were in, got rid of the sins we were doomed to keep on repeating. See, that's where we are without faith in Jesus. We're in a dead-end alley, and it's not just an alley, man. There's 4 walls all the way up, and we can't get out. We're in a pitch-black dungeon, and we keep trying to make our way to the exit, and somehow we just keep getting deeper in. We're in this deep pit with no hope of getting out, and all we can think to do is dig, and somehow we just keep getting deeper. That's where we are without the rescue of Jesus. So he steps into that alley. He knocks a hole in the wall to create a door, and he leads us out. Man, he steps into the dungeon, and he is the literal light of the sun, and man, he leads us right on out the door. He finds us in the bottom of that pit, and he doesn't just like toss a rope in. Man, he jumps down there with us and boosts us out. But it doesn't actually just end there. Do you know what happens to the dead-end alley? Jesus tore the walls down, and he built a house for the homeless. You know what happened to the dungeon? He ripped the roof off of it, and he planted a garden that would feed the nations. You know what happened to that deep pit? Man, he got us out of it, and then he turned it into a bottomless well of living water so that our souls never, ever have to thirst again. Faith isn't about being better. It's about being rescued by the one who is better, and he has done that for each and every one of us. You ever been on a cave tour before? Anybody cave tours? Done the cave tours? There's a moment in every single cave tour, and they're all exactly alike. You're in the cave, you're in there, they get you in probably the biggest room of the cave, it kind of echoes, it's cool, and then you know what they do? They shut the lights off. And every time, man, you were like 20 people were around you, and now there's nothing. You can't even see your hand right here, nothing. That's where we are before rescuing Jesus. Except there's nobody around us to help us. And our goal is to get out of something we can't even see in. And I guarantee you, if on one of those cave tours they told me, hey, we're going to shut the lights off, you get out, I would break an ankle, I'd fall in a pit, and I'd die there. That's just how that would go down. That's our faith trying to be better. We try to make our way out of an alley, but it's all the way up. We tried to get out of that dungeon, but there was no chance. And we just kept digging deeper in our pit. And it's in that spot where the rescue finally comes. So it's not about being better. It's about surrendering and trusting the one who is better. And then our faith journey starts to begin. It's about relinquishing control of our lives and trusting that he is in control of it. And in those moments, he begins to pour the endurance and patience on us that we need. It's not about waiting for a future something to make this world better, but it's trusting that he is making it better. And in that, we then get to live out his ideals. It's not actions. It's salvation and surrender through Jesus. Remember our friend, the American coot? He's not a duck. But if you just see him swimming along, you'll think he is. But he's the proof that just because it looks like a duck doesn't mean it is one. Just because you've been watching somebody or you've been listening to somebody and they've told you some things about faith doesn't mean it's actually true. We actually have to do the work to dig in and find the truth. And where's that truth found? Solely in Jesus. So the question you have to ask, what fiction am I buying into about my faith that is hindering me from living it out through Jesus?
The truth of Colossians 1 is Jesus, who is the supreme creator and ruler over the universe, loves you and made a way for you to be forgiven and be in a relationship with him. Let that sink in. Jesus created it all and loves you. If you want to have a conversation about what that means, or you are ready to start that relationship with Jesus, you can text your name to 601-397-6111. The Exchange family is here to walk with you because we are not meant to live life alone. Maybe you aren't ready for a full conversation yet. You can check out our website to find all our next steps and resources available to you. Thanks again for joining the gathering, and we hope to see you again next week. Till then, let's go be the church.